Hello, everyone. I'm Ivan Rodrigues, and it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the Economic Times webinar titled Accelerating Digital Transformation in the Next Normal Business Landscape, powered by Amazon Internet Services and NewGen. When COVID-19 struck, it forced societal changes around the globe. The shift towards digital operations took both a customer-facing and a behind-the-scenes role within many businesses. Pandemic made it imperative for enterprises to embrace remote operations and respond rapidly to the changing business needs. In short, accelerating digital transformation became a priority for enterprises across industries. The key priority for today's business leaders is to transform their enterprises into digital business entities. Empowerment of employee innovation is a must to survive the business changes in the digital world journey. Organizations are looking to leverage cloud for secure remote operations and low code for speed and agility. Today's webinar, powered by Amazon Internet Services and NewGen, will shed light on how low-code digital transformation platforms on cloud can help simplify complex processes, enhance business agility, improve customer and employee experience, and reduce the time to market, thereby helping organizations inch closer to their digital goals and make digital transformation a reality sooner rather than later. Some of the discussion points that the panel will touch upon include role of cloud adoption in accelerating digital transformation, era of low-code platforms and future considerations, key considerations while investing in a cloud-based digital transformation platform, leveraging drag and drop and point and click configurations to rapidly design, develop, and deliver responsive business applications, automating complex mission-critical and enterprise-wide applications on cloud, and deep automation and its impact on process efficiency. We have a power-packed panel to take you through this important topic. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming the speakers for today's webinar. We have with us today Vinod Bhatt, Chief Information Officer at Vistara, Pawan Chawla, Chief Information Security Officer at Future Generali India Life Insurance, Gagan Singla, Chief Marketing Officer and Chief Digital Officer at HDFC Securities, Ritesh Verma, Global Head, Business Consulting at NewGen Software, Sachin Seth, Partner at Ernst & Young India and Digital and FinTech Leader, Piyush Jain, Vice President and Global Delivery Head, Software and Digital Services at Quest Global, and Raghav Sehgal, Strategic ISV Account Manager at Amazon Internet Services. This panel will be moderated by Yogesh Jiandani, founder, Virtualize. Yogesh, over to you.
Thanks, Ivan. That was a very good introduction, and I couldn't have done it better than what you did. What I wanted to start with is looking at the white panel, what we have, and looking at the new normal has now become the next normal. Last year, we were all talking about the new normal. Digital transformation, digitalization, and acceleration. I mean, acceleration, I would say, is probably gone too fast in the last year, and primarily much of this acceleration which we have seen is probably the movement of the infrastructure from on-prem to cloud. AI has essentially galloped at a pace which is unheard of, and many use cases have been deployed ranging from fraud management to finance. We've seen so much of automation in configuration side. We have seen the automation in the process side, right? And there are simply now too many tools available, and it is becoming very difficult for customers to go out and figure out what tool fits into their portfolio. they are essentially now looking at how they can avoid going into a full code and looking at a low code or no code offering. It is indeed an honor to be amongst this esteemed panel of CXOs and heads from the various industry segments. And I wanted to start by asking the panel, specifically starting first with Ritesh. Uh, Ritesh, what do you see as the role of cloud in accelerating digital transformation, specifically looking at how low-code platforms can accelerate that transformation?
Thank you, Yogesh, and it's an honor to start the discussions and do the entire thing. So thanks a lot for this. What I feel is that probably low code and cloud are two technologies that will disrupt the times to come. Why I say that is that before the pandemic, everyone thought of digital transformation. Everyone thought that this has to happen. So it was like a virtual dream that had to be fulfilled. However, pandemic accelerated it all. So if you look at examples, uh, something as trivial as opening an account, which was agent driven, maybe ICICI Bank and Amitabh Bachchan were glorified, saying that Amitabh Bachchan flying a kite, agent comes and he submits his Aadhaar card and things get opened. That was no longer a reality. Everything moved into a portal. And this just happened over time. It was just a cutoff, March 26th, and everything went virtual. So for responding to these kind of things, you needed something which was configurable, built on something which was configured, nimble to match the business agility. This is something that people have realized to be a reality from a low code perspective. And that's where I feel low code comes in very, very aggressive in the overall transformation. Another thing that happened in the overall thing was that the IT team was also not permitted to enter into the building. It was a virtual shutdown. So in the shutdown, people were struggling how to make things happen. And that's where the cloud and the other imperatives come in handy, and it becomes very, very critical. So I think going in the future, cloud and low code as a joint strategy would be the next in times to come.
All right, let me just go across to Sachin. Sachin, your views on cloud, digital transformation, and what Pritesh just said, the importance of low-code platforms.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yogesh, and glad to be here with among the eminent panelists and industry thought leaders. So, I mean, Yogesh, I think your question is straightforward and very simple, but the answer is very difficult. And why I'm saying this is, because saying anything more than what has been already said in last 2 years about adoption of digital, adoption of cloud, adoption of simplification of how we build the technology, it's very difficult to find new ways of saying it again and again. But yeah, I mean, simply if I sum it up, I don't see any organization, be it in financial services, which is obviously very tech-centric, or even looking at manufacturing. There is nothing I see around me, whether it's a startup or a legacy company or a MSME, which can live without. There are companies who are, building the whole business on digital, and we are seeing the flurry of IPOs which have come in last, say, about a month, and next 1 month more are coming. And the companies which are building, using low code, no code platform basically for building agile, quick, fast solutions. I mean, I can give 100 examples on this, but let me tell you, there is no business I see which is not touched by these in last, if not in last 4 or 5 years, but last 1.5 years is definitely. So probably I'll wait for my next question to give you a little bit more, use cases or examples. But the question like you put up was such broad question in a way that, I mean, I can guarantee that there is no organization which is without working any of these actually at this point.
Yeah. So thanks, Sachin. So while you said cloud has literally touched every aspect of industries, whether it is enterprise, it is commercial, whether it is service provider, all of them are increasingly moving towards the cloud, or at least they're moving their infrastructure, they're cloudifying their infrastructure. So let me check with Raghav. Raghav comes, so let's take the AWS view, and what does AWS have to say about how their cloud is changing the way things are happening right now? How is it essentially accelerating, and how are they seeing the integration of these low-code platforms into the solutions with their customers? Raghav.
Thanks, Yogesh, and hi, good evening to everyone on the call. First of all, there are few major reasons why cloud is accelerating digital transformation. The first among being it just speeds up the pace of innovation, and it democratizes innovation. So you have the same resources as a startup as you have as a multi-billion-dollar organization. Customers can easily spin up resources for experimentation. The whole concept of fail fast and fail quick is really coming to the fore when you roll out your strategy on cloud. You can also have access to pretty much unlimited capacity to scale up. So there's no provisioning of excess provisioning or having annual or quarterly hardware refresh cycles and so on and so forth. And because of all this flexibility, our customers are able to innovate faster and deploy quicker and can roll out features at much faster pace. So that has accelerated a lot of digital transformation efforts. Now add to that the whole low code platforms. It is like adding fuel to fire, because what low code platforms do is that they free up resources for innovating and innovation rather than managing infrastructure. And that's, I think, the biggest boost that low code platforms have provided. It has also sort of ensured that building things like business apps is fairly decentralized. An individual BU with few tech savvy resources can build their own business applications, and they don't have to be reliant upon the might of the IT organization to do that for them. So that has resulted in a lot of innovation. That has resulted in essentially people being more self-reliant on building their own applications and serving their customers. And that has also seen effect on not just large organizations, but small organizations as well. You don't need to have an IT department, quote unquote, to build a e-commerce storefront. You can do it on your own, because thanks to low-code platforms. You can add multiple widgets. You can add any functionality to your platform using such low-code organizations. So that combination has proved to be extremely useful, especially in the context of digital transformation.
Okay. All right, so you said digital transformation, innovation, and essentially looking at self-reliance, or basically the Atmanirbhar for creating your own apps. Using the low-code platforms, what are the kind of use cases which are around? So let me just go across to Piyush and just take his views, insights on what are some of the use cases he's saying which low-code platforms are driving.
Yeah, thanks, Yogesh. And first of all, privileged to be on the panel today. In terms of use case, before I get into use cases, I'd just like to bring out a point on the digital transformation that we're seeing. So if you look at pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, there are certain set of industries that were ahead of the curve. The financial industry, the consumer-centric industry, high-tech industry, retail, media, they were all ahead of the curve. I think they were already on to faster adoption of newer technologies and stuff. But the industrial world, because I come from an engineering services background, we provide engineering services to a lot of industrial customers. They were behind the curve. I think what pandemic has shown is that they can also adopt digital technologies faster than what they were earlier hoping to. I think earlier the thought process was that you have to really go through the entire cycle before you can adopt digital. I think pandemic also brought a realization, because all this remote connectivity and managing business remotely, I think opened up their eyes that it is possible to do it with cloud, right? So there is a faster adoption of cloud happening in the industrial world as well. And they have now looked at how some of these newer tools like low code tools can help them, because if you really look at industrial world, their IT organizations are not as high tech savvy as perhaps the organizations that you see in the industries that are ahead of the curve. And for them to get access to tools like low code tools, which can accelerate their adoption of digital and make their business more conducive to manage it remotely and online, I think is helping them. Now, specific use cases, I think what we have been working with some of our clients is mostly around workflow right now. There are quite a lot of workflow based decision making that their business groups were doing, where they're looking at, and these are things that they have been requesting their IT teams to help them out with. And now with low code, we are seeing a faster adoption of some of those workflow automation that can happen. And the other thing that has picked up pace is around asset management. Many of these companies have a lot of assets that they want to manage, and the assets generate a lot of data. So how do you remotely manage the assets and configure them with a low code application where you can visualize the app that you need, and then have the data sources connected to it, and then generate the app for them to manage and configure remotely. Field support, for example, which can be done using a low code tool. So some very interesting use cases have started. I would not say they have been widely adopted yet. I think they're still kind of getting in the process of working them out, fine-tuning them out. But it's going to be an interesting journey, because I think these tools are going to really help them accelerate the deployment of online access, remote access to a lot of applications that they were using earlier.
Okay. So thanks, Piyush, for your insights. Let me just go across to Mr. Gagan and ask him what are some of the use cases, how does he envisage low-code platforms, and what are some of the insights he would like to share specific to his industry.
Yeah, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, hi everyone. Happy to be here. Yeah, see, I have come from a tech background, so I worked in coding and all. So I have been a fairly different view. I think low-code platforms I've used 20 years back and so on. So I don't know. I always find some of this coming to industry much later than they should have. Right? And then since advanced applications always need proper coding, so I think most of the low-code platforms actually end up getting used mostly at simpler use cases, right? And some of the most deeper, advanced differentiation-based use cases or flows which are more useful for your efficiency improvements or productivity improvements or doing better in the industry, you are actually ending up doing the proper full applications, right? Am I on the right track, Yogesh? Because I joined later, so I'm just trying to understand. I'm talking about the same topic, right?
Yeah. So what I hear you say is essentially low code has been there. It's not something new. And what you're essentially saying is looking at how you can look at not just the simple use cases, but how you can probably look at replacing some of the tools which have been used to create the full-fledged applications.
Correct. And in my view, it is not possible. It is impossible, right? But fundamental definition of how technology is designed, the more advanced things needs more expertise, right? Therefore, you have to do hard coding. You have to do proper code, right? So low-code platforms are good for simpler use cases for mass, wherever you are not trying to differentiate, but just trying to run of the mill use cases. And the moment you get into differentiation, you get into specific complex cases of your industry, you have to build proper application. That is my personal view, maybe different from the rest of the people. And yeah, cloud, obviously, I'm the DFC now, and everybody knows that we are trying to move to cloud, building something very special across multiple clouds put together. It's fairly there in the media also. And yeah, I think it has accelerated a lot here with the pandemic. I do feel so. I joined only 7 months back, but I do see that the acceleration is higher. In my previous jobs or in my e-commerce time, cloud has been there since years. So, but I see BFSI accelerating significantly now.
All right. So we heard Piyush talking about some of the use cases, mostly driven around efficiency, probably even the field as he said, right? So that is the use case he was driving. And what Gagan just said is essentially low code has its own use cases, which they are seeing, and maybe it will accelerate. It may just entrench both upwards and downwards wherever the no code or the full code environments are. So my question to Vinod now, Vinod, from Vistara's perspective, from a business versus technology transformation, what is the role you are seeing specifically how low-code platforms are something which can help you in your digital transformation in either or both the business and technology transformation?
Thank you, Yogesh, for having me. Again, it's a pleasure to be part of this esteemed panel discussion. I think let's understand. I think we started with that the whole digital transformation which has happened, to us, particularly last 18 months or so. So this has opened up a lot of avenues for us. I think luckily Vistara was always on cloud, but the enterprises who are migrating to cloud or leveraging the cloud, you will see that there is no dearth of resources. You can compute, you can get storage, network, whatever you want to get. So that's really good news. Now the question is that the pace of acceleration for the projects, how do you make sure that, because so many projects have come to IT suddenly, right? So I think there is a scope where you actually look at the projects which actually qualify for the low-code, no-code platforms. I think that is a big exercise which I think enterprises should do, because it is an evolving journey. It has just started in the industry. So there are multiple use cases which are actually going to help business or helping business. In fact, for example, core visualization, the whole reporting, they can actually manage the whole customer experience, the reporting getting out of it. On the e-commerce side, they can do it. The whole document management, publishing can be done through low-code, no-code. So there are a lot of workflows which should be analyzed, and business, quote unquote shadow IT, you call them, or season IT, from the low-code, no-code terminology perspective. I think the challenge should be how do we make sure that we have scale built for season IT, because it's a change. It's a change which actually they have to also undergo. While typically IT teams are very comfortable doing coding or very familiar with the process, but how do you make business people tech savvy per se to an extent that they can use these tools for their processes? I think there is where I would say the rubber meets the road, where you have to really make sure that there are more ambassadors, more workforces, and the right usage of these platforms, and pushing these platforms to the cloud, making sure that we leverage the larger ecosystem. I think that is exactly what we are doing, making sure that the technology which is getting mature, the tools are there, and how do we move slowly, process by process, workflow by workflow, area by area towards it, so that there is more power given to the business user, the seasoned IT users or shadow IT users. I think that's, I believe, is the mantra which help us IT folks to scale up and focus on some mission critical where serious hard coding is coding is required, or even the whole solution architecture or enterprise architecture we talk about can be really thought through. Back to you, Vish.
All right, so thanks, Vinod. Let me just go across back to Sachin. So Sachin, we heard some of the use cases shared by Piyush, Mr. Gagan, and Vinod. And also Vinod brought an interesting point. He said business, shadow IT, and essentially why can't we enable the business people with simplified tools so that they can also interact and be a part of this app journey. And so what, according to you, while we have seen the low-code, no-code platforms, they are building these functionalities, they're making it easier. When you are interacting with some of your customers, or when you are advising some of your customers, where do you see more interaction happening? Do you see more the low-code discussions are happening on the business side of the house, or are you still seeing that the discussions are happening on the technology side of the house? And if they are happening on whichever side, what are the apps in focus? We did hear the mid-range apps, as Gagan pointed out, or where Vinod said that it has its own application areas. It does fit into many of those buckets. What are you seeing, and what is the advice you are giving to some of your customers?
Yeah, thank you, Yogesh, again for giving me opportunity to give my point of view. So first of all, I think I did hear very interesting point of view from Gagan as well as from Vinod, and I will use both these point of view to sort of provide my inputs as well. So first, if I take up the point what Gagan mentioned, that yes, low code, no code platforms have been there, though till today also they are used mostly for the non-critical situations or where you need a quick fix, quick fast solutions. But if you have heavy transaction load, if you require a deep functionality, etc., it is difficult to build on low code, no code, and that's a very fair point, I must say. While Vinod obviously mentioned that business users empowerment or basically business users need can be fulfilled, or there is a need to fulfill that, right? Because everything IT cannot be doing it, right? And that also is very, very relevant. So I think if you stitch these points together, what's coming out is that what business users were accustomed to 5 years back, let's say, IT being sort of a support for everything what they wanted to do, right? Even if there's a small change required in a screen of a mobile app, or let's say a web application or any of the workflow, they were dependent completely on the IT team. And the dependence was not created by IT team. It was generally the applications were written in such a way that you needed people to understand the underlying technology to make any changes, right? But today what's happening is, if you take the examples, and if I give financial services examples, right? If you take a loan origination system, right? Or if you take a KYC system for any of the banks or any of the lending application or any of the broking application, right? The way the applications are being written, package applications, or the applications are being written by in-house team, etc. Typically, the expectation is that certain level of parameterization is happening, and the workflow creation, are the need of the business on a daily basis, right? Daily, on a day-to-day work, you need to actually realign the business depending on the external factors, customer needs, etc. So it is very difficult to go back to IT, write a business detailed requirement for that, get it, implemented, tested, etc. So I think this is where the junction of this technology and business becoming more powerful. And there is hardly any business people I deal with to the level of business heads or CEOs wherein they don't understand that how technology needs to support, and and that's why they are also insisting that their own teams should be empowered enough to be able to make these changes on a regular basis, right? And that is exactly what's happening. So the role of IT is becoming more and more about looking at underlying technology platforms, looking at what would be on cloud, how the scalability will come, how security will be managed, etc. But as far as the business functionality is concerned, a lot of power is being transferred to the business users, and that's where low-code, no-code platform is also supporting. And I do agree with Gagan that you can't write everything on low-code, no-code, but you can write a lot of it, which is becoming very critical today to make changes to become a customer-centric organization. So I thought, I hope I was able to put down these points together to give a point of view, but happy to answer any further sort of question if on this is.
All right. Let me go across to Pawan then. Pawan, we heard from the team that technology is the enabler. IT teams are also now becoming the enablers, and the business people are now taking the lead and jumping into the app decision making, looking at the ease of use. Now, what interaction would you look at within your organization or outside, where you are seeing that the low code platforms are enabling you to quickly develop some apps which probably were a couple of years ago? I mean, probably let's call it as the pre-COVID era, right? And the post-COVID era. What, according to you, are low-code platforms enabling you to deploy within your organization, and how is the business taking the benefit of that?
Thanks, Yogesh, for giving me an opportunity to speak with such knowledgeable people and on this particular platform. The question is very interesting, and I realize that I am the only security guy on the panel, along with other business leaders and IT leaders in the discussion. So yes, if we talk about pre-COVID era and post-COVID era, a lot of things have changed. So like my co-panelists have already addressed that concern that digital transformation was there as a part of agenda in many of the organizations, which has gone at a speed of rocket when the pandemic hit and people started adopting technologies which were available in the market, and then started trying brought the business in line with the expectation of their customer, and whether internal or external, or as per the business needs. The adaptation was very fast. The movement was very fast. The transformation from a in-house platforms to the digital platform has changed a lot over a period of time. Now, considering all these aspects, that these are uh, the low-cost platforms have added value, and we are one of the organizations which have adopted many such platforms as well during the post-COVID era, when it comes to servicing the customer as well. But being a security guy, I would like to touch base on the security aspect of it. Is that is one area which was not thought through when adopting the technologies at that point of time, when everybody started to moving or adopting the agile platform, the agile the low cost platforms which were available. I would not say they were not secure enough, but yeah, that's one of the aspects which needs to be looked at and should have been considered at that point of time, which people realized at a later stage when they saw that there were number of attacks which have increased over a period of time. And if you read the reports which was of last year, the attacks has gone up to 635% in 2020 itself, starting January till 31st December, and this year also that has increased to a different level. So they are business enabler, but yes, at the end of the day, security needs to be kept in the mind and evaluated. Security comes in the first stage, not at the last stage. That is something which everybody should consider and involve your CISOs and security leaders into the discussion while considering all these technologies, whether integrating an API, whether it is adopting a third-party code, whether it is embedding that particular code within your own tool, or adopting that particular code to customize a tool for yourself. So in all the aspects, these things have been done, and many organizations have done the same. The examples which I've gave you, adopted the code, embedded the code in the current applications, which are built in-house. The APIs have been integrated. Various APIs have been integrated to service customers. The digital adaptation of all these technologies have expedited the adaptation in servicing the customer to deliver business value internally and externally. That would be my stake.
Okay. So accelerating the pace of innovation, but go steadily, ensure that the security piece is addressed, whether you're addressing it inside the code, outside the code, in the infrastructure, in the cloud. You're saying that is something which needs to be addressed. So don't go blindly, just ensure that the security elements are all put in place so that while you're developing the application, the business enablers are there, it looks nice, quick, faster, but at the same time ensure that you are keeping your information, your data, plus of course the entire platform secure. So good point, Pawan. I would like now to gyrate across to Gagan and probably touch base again with him to look at. He did touch upon the low code platforms being there, but having certain use cases. So, Gagan, in the areas of customer experience, in the areas of process efficiency, right? What role are you seeing the low code platforms playing?
Okay. See, as Sachin said, which I think he summed up things pretty well, whenever you want to become customer centric, right, you don't need to do advanced applications, right? And advanced application may be just one part of the system, but if you look at from the positive side, like last time when I was mentioning, I was talking about what low code cannot do. But if you look at what low code can do, right? And if you see how to improve your customer experience, are very small improvements in your processes, in your journeys, in your engagement with customers. Like even as simple as customer feedbacks can be done from simple platforms, right? Some of those things can significantly improve your customer experience, right? So we constantly look at making simple apps and simple workflows, which can be done through a drag and drop method from a method, right? and then even improving your journeys, right? The way you change the flow of the journeys to simple platforms. Right? Some of those things, in my view, are the way the customer experience can be improved. And as everybody knows, that getting into the mind of the customer and finding that one small thing which makes a huge difference can be much more useful than trying to actually build up something very complex. Right? From that perspective, I think the customer journeys, flows, and simple interjections are where we can use these platforms.
All right, let me just go across again to Vinod. Vinod, we heard from Gagan coming from one customer from a different industry. Let's understand from a Vistara standpoint, what are the areas, and I would like to still be on the customer experience area because that's where we are seeing a lot of use cases coming up. Even Piyush does mention the workflows are coming up. What are you seeing in your industry specifically around maybe the CX or the process efficiency? And have you deployed any use cases right now on using maybe a low code, maybe whatever, but what is that you're trying to improve? And what are the platforms which you are evaluating as of right now?
Yogesh, as I said in my first point, that right now what we're doing is actually we're looking at all the use cases which are qualifying for no-code and low-code platforms. And we have shortlisted few. Some are large enterprises which are already giving us this option, so we don't have to do much, and we're already on cloud, so we're just marrying the things. But we have found many cases, as I said, that it starts from the whole workflows where in airlines there are a lot of document publishing happening where you need to make sure that the manuals are current. So that's, I think, a very good use case where you don't have to maintain the latest. That is from the internal point of view. But from the customer point of view, there is basically the whole customer support, how it can be made much better, where you can connect the dots. And similarly on the marketing side, if there are changes to be done, business can do themselves. Some urgent notifications which can need to be done because of the disruptive nature of airlines changes. So those can be done directly by the business, and those can be done in much effective way. And they don't have to even call IT. So I think that power we have already started giving to the business. For example, the whole reporting which is generated, I think that's already done automatically by the business. They change it. So I think the power is slowly, as I said, that you are giving that to the business users, and as and when the use cases qualified by that. But I believe that in every vertical, every department internally, there are use cases, and we're just prioritizing them and making sure that which will help us better internally or customer facing both.
All right, let me just go across to Ritesh now that the customers have given a very interesting point, and Vinod did mention there's a gamut of internal plus the external. So while the external is important, he brought up a very interesting point, which was around internalization and how business is taking control of that internalization, probably the document automation, which he referred to. What are some of the use cases you are seeing with your customers? If I was to bucket it into that internal or the external, where are you seeing your customers? Where are you spending more time with your customers? Is it on the external side of use cases or more towards the in-house side of the use cases?
Well, thank you, Mr. Vinod, for bringing out things at such clarity. One thing for sure, Yogesh, is that the role of IT and business is getting merged somehow. So one thing brilliant that Amazons and Googles have done is that no business guy is less IT savvy, and IT guys have to be equally business savvy in order to make things happen. So that is promoting a lot of impetus towards the low code and technologies like ours to kind of take the business to take control of their solution. They can't no longer blame the ops or the IT for things not happening. So there are two kind of requirements that are coming up, Yogesh. One is for the laggards. So in those cases, the external facing things are getting much more important. So they're saying, let me first fix how to address the customer first, and then we'll come back to our backend processes and things like that. The second are the kind of things that are coming up from the technologically savvy industries like Mr. Vinod, Piyush, and probably all the gentlemen over here, is that they say that, look, I'm in the middle somewhere. I need to fix up my front end, but the front end cannot work in isolation. Unless it marries back to my back end, I would be left in a soup. So the roadmap for definition of this entire journey is being laid out very, very nicely. And probably that pays off for my bread, butter, and jam at the moment for us. So how you can make it on a low code perspective, doing it with minimal disruptions. How can you marry the front end of mobility portal to the backend processes of operations, integrate it with the core banking, ERP, insurance, CRM systems at the backend, and make them work as one unit for the business to actually now make use of the reporting things that Mr. Vinod talked about, or other perspectives, is that we are spending most of our times in, is architecting the whole thing properly.
So interesting. You were saying that you are still seeing customers go where the revenues and probably the profits are, and then they will fix up their operations and their internal costs later. So that's how it looks like. Let me just go across to Raghav. And Raghav, what is your perspective on where are some of the drivers which you are seeing your customers pushing you? While I understand you are looking at more from an overall cloud perspective, but how are the low-code platforms helping you address some of the solutions with your customers? And maybe if you can just let us know if there is any significant use case which you would like to talk about specific to India.
Sure. Thank you, Yogesh. What we've seen is, since the beginning of pandemic, when everything got shut down, it became very difficult for organizations to cater to their customers. And there was, a deluge of queries that businesses were facing, and not enough agents coming online quickly and getting trained. And we saw a lot of, businesses starting developing low-code customer-facing applications to specifically, in chat domain to cater to such questions or queries which are routine queries. So things like FAQs or any customers who's coming on to an organization's and interacting with organization's chat box. So I think that is one use case that we saw a tremendous amount of uptick in, and our customers who are in this business of creating such low-code platforms and communication tools saw a heavy uptick in all the tools that would require increasing agent efficiency and at some places answering questions which are of routine in nature and not really requiring an agent intervention in its entirety. So I think that's one place I saw a couple of my clients really scale up.
All right, Raghav, I have a follow-up question on that. Since you touched an interesting area of looking at automation more from a customer support and looking at the chatbot, how important is it to your customers to have functionalities like maybe a drag drop or a point click and build solutions around using the low-code platforms?
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that last part?
So how important are functionalities like point click or a drag drop, specifically when they're using low-code platforms?
So from the perspective of business users, it basically gives them a playing field. I mean, it's often said that such low-code platforms are Lego-like systems, right? So it pretty much gives them that playing field to put the functionality they need in terms of a box and connectors and add source code source to it, and create application in minutes. So I've seen that it's extremely critical. So let me step back. We, at least from my perspective, we have two type of customers. One, who are actually creating such low code platforms, like Newgen, and the second one would be who are using such low code platforms. So for the customers who are creating such low code platforms, for them, providing a fully functional feature in a manner of point and click and drag, and those becomes very, very critical. And more newer features are being added. Even to the extent of adding capabilities around machine learning. Chat boxes again is a great example around that. And then once that feature is available, then their own customers and the business users love to sort of play around and create their own applications that suit their own customer requirements. And it's not a one-shot thing, right? The beauty of this such low-code platforms is that business users can keep adding or subtracting functionalities based on customer feedback, and it doesn't have to be dependent on and they don't have to be dependent on IT release cycles.
Okay. All right, let me just go across to Piyush. And Piyush, Raghav said the importance of those functionalities. Vinod pointed out making it easier for the business. We heard from Sachin, the business is essentially driving the top today while IT is doing the walk. And essentially it is a sort of a co-creation model which both of them are putting up on the table. What, in your view, is driving this co-creation today from a customer standpoint? If I was to look at, let's say, the financial segment, or maybe look at the healthcare or any other industry, what are some of the key drivers which you're seeing which are really pushing, probably are from the prioritization? Vinod said that, yes, we have a lot of things on our priority. We are actually separating the shelf and we are getting those key ones which we are trying to drive. What are you seeing in your industry?
Yes, actually, it's a very interesting question, Yogesh, and I think Vinod, Sachin, and others touched upon it. So if you look at business in general, right, I think business always wanted IT exclusively for them. I mean, if you look at different business departments, I think everybody would have secretly wanted a separate IT team working for them, because I think a lot of requirements get generated which they feel are not getting attention from a central IT team, which is bound to happen in an organization, because the entire IT play gets very complex as the organization business grows. So what I am seeing now with the trend of low code, no code, and also cloud coming in a lot of ways, the IT department also is getting a little decentralized. I think while there is a core IT department that will focus on the complex applications, like Gagan said, which are required, where a lot of expertise is needed to build those and manage those. And then there are offshoots where are simpler applications, which are workflow automation, asset management, and other things, which or like chatbot support and stuff like that, customer experience things, which can actually be managed by business with a little bit of savviness of tech in part. So there could be a small segment of IT sitting with business to make sure that they're able to leverage these tools to build those apps. Obviously, these apps will have to be integrated with the central IT also, because a lot of data gets still pulled in from the central IT. So there has to be an interface that happens between business and IT continuously. But I think a decentralized IT function associated with business is something that you will start seeing in the industry, because that is what will help move things faster, because agility, I think, is becoming critical. Agility in terms of making sure that you are able to do things fast. And I think that is the reason you are seeing some of these platforms coming into much more play now. Like Gagan touched upon it. If you remember 20-25 years ago, this platform used to be called case tools. So it used to be called computer-aided software engineering, which is nothing but what you call as low-code tools now. Those tools were the visual tools where you could visualize and generate code. So I think agility is what is driving a lot of this behavior. So I see a decentralized IT with a lot of association with business on some of the simpler applications, where core IT will focus on the core the core complex applications that are going to be there. And I think the in terms of making sure that these applications continue to function, I think that integration will also play a big part. I think those integration points will have to be thought through. Visualization is going to be key. I think a lot of business are able to visualize their requirements. They are not able to translate them into actual program, which is where these tools can help them and bridge that gap.
Okay. So interesting. So case tools is equal to low code platforms of today. While you made that comment, I wanted to understand, is it that cycle which is repeating, or what are the differences? I'm sure that over the years, there is a marked difference between what case tools were and what low code platforms are. And essentially ease. How would you rate it from an ease of use today versus what it was back then?
So I think the tools have definitely improved a lot, Yogesh. Case tools were also, visual tools, but the technology that was available at that time obviously made them difficult to adopt, which is why they actually never became successful, even though they came out, about 20, 25 years ago. Today, I think the tools, particularly this app culture that has happened, so this entire flavor of app development and the entire infrastructure around apps has really progressed very much in the last 20 years. Mobility has played a big part to it. I think app development has become easier and easier, which is why you see a lot of adoption of apps. The second thing that I'm seeing with tools today compared to last 20 years ago, this entire app platform where you can create apps and create those templates for others to reuse. So the concept of reuse has actually become very, very important, and it has actually become very prevalent. You can just do plug and play of templates that people have already created and create your app quickly, which was not the case earlier. Earlier, everything had to be kind of designed, scratched, and then taken through the whole cycle. So I think the culture of doing things on an app-based kind of a mindset has seen a tremendous change in the last 20 years. So the tools that we have today are far more, business friendly, far more user friendly, far easier to learn and get things done. And of course, today's engineers are also quite savvy in picking up things quickly in terms of adopting to those tools and those changes and stuff like that. So I feel the tools today are much more savvy compared to what they were about 20, 25 years ago.
Okay. So interesting perspective. What we started with and where we are right now. Essentially, what the three key takeaways which I'm looking at. One obviously is cloud has been the driver. So that infrastructure has been the driver, which is essentially important for us in the democratization of applications. It is touching both these sides of the houses. So people who are creating the platform and people who are consuming the platform. And essentially, the development of those low-code platforms is essentially accelerating the digital transformation at a much more frenetic pace than what we would have seen some 20, 25 years ago. So something which was too soon looks like it's the right time for it now. And interesting use cases we talked about. So thanks all the panelists. It is a wonderful experience and quite an honor to be amongst you, learning from you, and probably the audience will have a few takeaways as well. So the first takeaway, which I said, is democratization. The second is making it easier. And I don't know if I could potentially look at finding a word like BizOps or something like that, just like DevOps is, where you're looking at the intersection of IT and business, right? So that is which is the enabler and essentially making the business the driver of the application. So thanks for your insights, and over to you, Evan, for the conclusion.
Thank you, Yogesh, for taking us through such an enlightening session. It was an absolute pleasure, like you said, to listen to such a fantastic discussion. Before we conclude the session, I'd like to express my gratitude to every member of our panel for making the time to join us here today and for sharing their knowledge and expertise with us. Thank you once again for joining this session on accelerating digital transformation in the next normal business landscape, powered by Amazon Internet Services and NewGen. We look forward to seeing all of you for more such sessions in future. On behalf of ET Edge, This is Ivan Rodrigues signing off. Have a nice day. Stay safe.